evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start the meeting.
Just give them a chance now to settle down.
Yep. Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Muazzez Riordan. I'm the project manager for the proposed intersection and signal improvements project, which will be presented this evening. I work in the roadway project management section at the Massachusetts Department of Transportation's Highway Division headquarters in Boston. Just for your information, tonight's proceedings are being aired on local cable channels and Facebook Live. Once the meeting is completed this evening, the attendance sheet will become a part of the public record. So if you would like your attendance at this meeting to be part of the public record, please sign in on the sheet located on the table next to the entrance. Project handouts contains details regarding this project, as well as the mail-in sheet. They are next to the sign-in sheet. First, I would like to introduce the members of the Design Public Hearing Panel. Ann Sullivan, Lori Schratek, Jeff Goin, Steve Rizzotti from the District 3 office, Brian Slack and Maria Russo from our Right-of-Way Bureau, Lindsay DeTona and GPI team is town's design consultants for this project. Ann Carrington of Arlington Typing and Mailing, Arlington, Massachusetts, will be making a verbatim transcript of tonight's hearing. Notice of this meeting appeared in Lowell Sun on February 19, 2019, and February 26, 2019, and Acton Beacon on February 21, 2019, and February 28, 2019. A copy of the notice is in the handout and will be attached in the final public hearing transcript. The purpose of this meeting is to solicit your input regarding this project. We are at the preliminary design stage. As the plans are not yet complete, we may not be able to answer all of your questions or respond to all of your comments at this time. You can use the last page of the handout for your written comments and mail it to us within 10 days of today. This project must be programmed in the statewide transportation improvement program in the appropriate federal fiscal year in order for Mass DOT to solicit bids for eventual construction. The total estimated cost of the project is $14 million. This does not include any right-of-way acquisition costs. The design is expected to be completed in the winter of 2021. Construction is expected to be completed within 24 months after the notice to proceed. Now, I would like to ask Brian Slack to explain the municipal right-of-way procedure.
Good evening. Good evening. When the Commonwealth, acting through its Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division, indicated it would accept this $14 million project for funding, your municipality accepted certain responsibilities. One of those responsibilities is acquiring all the necessary rights in private and public land for design, construction, implementation of this project. My function is to review and recommend procedures for your municipality will use in according with these rights. The procedures used must comply with both federal and state regulation. The current design plan indicates that there are 0 fee acquisitions, 20 permanent easements, and 26 temporary easements on municipal-owned roads. That will be required. The property owners impacted by this project will be contacted by your municipal officials on the municipal-owned roads. They will present the proposed impacts to each owner and discuss the methods with which they may acquire the needed rights for the project. Frequently, municipalities will appeal for donations to minimize the acquisition cost for your community. However, donations are not required, and property owners are entitled to appraisal, review appraisal, and just compensation. Right-of-way documents will be provided to each owner to help them understand the acquisition process and how the project affects their property. Affected property owners' rights are protected under our Massachusetts general laws, primarily Chapter 79, and because this project is receiving federal funds, the property owner's rights are further defined under Title III of the Real Properties Act of 1970, as amended. I'll be happy to answer any general questions concerning right-of-way activities during the open forum and will be available after the hearing for any specific questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Now, I would like to ask Mario Russo to explain the municipal right-of-way procedure.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Mario Russo, and if you have any follow-up questions in the near future or going forward, I can be reached at 508-721-4404 if you should happen to come up with a question or concern. I represent the Right-of-Way Bureau, the project section of Mass DOT. The Right-of-Way Bureau, as Brian mentioned, we're responsible for all the acquisitions of necessary rights in private and public lands, design and construction for the implementation of this project. The property owners that the project section is responsible for will be contacting the individual property owners that are involved in this project. Again, the property owners' rights are protected under our Massachusetts general laws, Chapter 79. If a project is receiving federal funds, the owner's rights are further protected under Title III, as amended from 1973. I will be here during the meeting and, God willing, after the meeting. If you have any general or specific questions, if I can't answer them, I will get somebody to answer them for you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mario, for explaining the state right-of-way procedure. Lindsay Detona of GPI will describe town's project in detail for you. I ask that you hold your questions until she completes her presentation, and I open the meeting to the public.
Good evening. My name is Lindsay Detono. I'm an engineer and project manager with Greenman Peterson, Inc., GPI. We are, as Mass DOT explained, the design consultants working for the town of Acton. We work closely with Mass DOT and the town to facilitate this design process and put this design together as it stands currently here at the 25% design level. I'm going to go over a brief presentation to provide an overview of the project. And as discussed, we'll wait until the end to open up the public comment period. So the project team consists of the town of Acton, who is the project proponent, GPI, that's us, we're the design consultant for the town, and Mass DOT's Highway Division, which is responsible for administering the design process and providing resident engineer services during construction. The FHWA is also involved, responsible for oversight, given that this project is receiving federal funds. The overall project objective is to continue the Town of Acton's initiative to transform the Kelly's Corner area into a safe, accessible, and walkable destination, while addressing corridor congestion and improving the safety of pedestrians, bicyclists, students, and drivers. Really, the driving force behind this project is a complete streets design, which is intended to allow for safe, accessible accommodations for all users of all abilities and for all modes, biking, pedestrians, transit, and vehicles. Just a quick background, the project has been in the works for quite some time now, since the late 70s when a Harvard University plan looked at transforming Kelley's Corner into a safe, attractive, and desirable area. Since then, the town has really worked hard to secure funding for community engagement, to develop conceptual cross-sections and designs through engineering studies, and secure state and federal construction funding for the project. These efforts have led to the project being programmed on the TIP, which is the Transportation Improvement Program, and which is slated for federal fiscal year 2022 to fund the construction of the project. Around 2016, GPI was engaged to begin developing the 25% design. And since then, we submitted the original 25% design about a year ago. And since then, the town has been working through public outreach efforts to obtain feedback and address concerns with that original plan. Tonight, the 25% design is being presented to you, and hopefully you had a chance to look over the documents here tonight. So this map here shows you the general project area. The project area consists of Massachusetts Avenue, which is Route 111 running east to west, and Main Street, Route 27 running north to south. It also includes Community Lane, which is the roadway there, I believe considered no-name road currently, which forms the triangle between Main Street and Mass Ave at the center of Kelley's Corner. The project also includes Charter Road, which is the entrance to the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District. And the limits here generally, beginning on the west side of Mass Ave, extend just prior to reaching Charter Road, through the intersection and to the limits of the Roach Brothers Plaza area. On Main Street, the project limits on the north end extend from the Exit 2 off-ramp, the Route 2 off-ramp, southbound just past Beverly Road. So why is this project needed? To start, I'll briefly go over some of the existing issues, and then we can talk through the proposed improvements to address those issues. So congestion and delays on Main Street and Mass Ave. The project area is obviously located within a very densely developed area containing commercial and retail properties, restaurants, banks, shopping plazas, pharmacy, gas stations, as well as the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Complex, which contains several schools. All of these land uses really result in a lot of local traffic. But given its proximity to Route 2, the project also has a significant amount of regional traffic, which is estimated to contribute to approximately 80% of the traffic in the area. So given this, it's really no surprise that the high volume of traffic generated through these uses really results in a lot of congestion and delay in the project area. Intersection safety, another existing issue. You can see here on the left, this is the view from Charter Road, the entrance to the school complex. Looking left at Mass Ave, I'm sure you've all experienced this, but it's difficult to see there, and we call that a sight distance issue, which at this location causes a lot of problems for vehicles, as well as the pedestrians and the students in that area. On the right is Community Lane at Mass Ave. So this view, we're looking up Community Lane. This is the intersection that is across from the CVS and the TD Bank, Community Lane at Mass Ave. And this intersection is currently unsignalized, and along with the unsignalized operation, as well as the geometry of the intersection, the lack of pavement markings and signing really contributes to the crash rate at this location, which exceeds the statewide average for unsignalized intersections. Not shown here is the Main Street at Mass Ave intersection. The crash rate at that location with that signalized intersection still does exceed the statewide average crash rate for signalized intersections. Deficient pedestrian accommodations and accessibility. I mentioned complete streets. The intent of a complete street is to provide safe accommodations for all users, and that includes pedestrians. In the Kelley's Corner project area, there's really inconsistent sidewalk coverage and lack of connectivity. Pedestrian routes don't currently meet the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, usually due to their dimensions, materials, slopes, or obstructions you can see in some of these images. Pedestrian crossings in the project area also are not compliant, lacking curb ramps, detectable panels, and adequate signing. At the signalized intersection of Main Street and Mass Ave, the signal infrastructure, push buttons, signs, and signals are also not ADA compliant. Additionally, the pedestrian crossing phase at that signalized location is not timed adequately to allow the appropriate crossing distance for those crosswalks. Bicycle accommodations. A lot of people wonder why bicycle accommodations are necessary, but it goes back to the complete streets policies that are implemented statewide and in the municipality. And also the need for bicycle accommodations is tied to the funding mechanisms that some of this project is tapping into. In these pictures, you can see the lack of bicycle accommodations or the inconsistency thereof. There's very few bicycle accommodations within the project area, and those that are there don't meet policies or design guidance. Dedicated bicycle facilities are not provided throughout the project limits. Pavement markings are inconsistent, and safe intersection crossings are also not provided. Poor access and curb cut management. What we mean here is really in relation to driveways. Given the high quantity of commercial, retail businesses, and residences within the project area, there are a lot of driveways within these high traffic volume areas. Driveway widths are inconsistent, contributing to both driver and pedestrian confusion. Several driveways are much wider than necessary, with no real consistent widths or crossing areas, creating a hazard for pedestrians and the vehicles, as well as bicyclists. The high quantity of driveways contribute to the traffic congestion and delays, where turning vehicles have no place to queue and wait for an opening in the opposing traffic. So based on these existing issues we've talked about, there's really a set of project goals. These goals are also a result of the funding mechanism that's being provided for the project and the policies of Federal Highway as well as Mass DOT and the town. So the project goals are really to improve intersection safety and operations, and we can look at the ways we're going to try to address this. Reduce congestion and traffic delays, address pedestrian and cyclist safety and accommodations, promote connectivity and walkability to bring people to Kelley's Corner and make it a pleasant place to be, and to incorporate streetscape elements, landscaping where possible, and pedestrian lighting as well as gathering areas. While these are all primary goals, we really need to be sensitive to the abutters, existing vegetation, and historic resources that do exist. There's also environmental resources that you try to be sensitive to as you're designing. And drainage and utility improvements are also a requirement. This project will require quite a few of relocations or replacements for the drainage infrastructure and the utilities that are out there today. So I won't walk through these right here, but this is a list of what we're proposing to meet these project goals. And a lot of these items you probably saw on the plans, and we can step through some of these. But we're looking at additional traffic signals or replacement and optimization of signalized intersections or the signalized intersection that's there today, as well as capacity improvements. So providing additional turn lanes or driving lanes where they are warranted based on the traffic volumes, as well as accessible pedestrian sidewalks, separation, a buffer area, if you will, between the roadway and the pedestrian sidewalks for safety. Pedestrian crosswalks and safety, so we will talk talk about rectangular rapid flashing beacons in a bit to see how that's going to help address some of the pedestrian crossing areas and the safety of those. And incorporating bicycle lanes. The project will have 5-foot bicycle lanes throughout both sides of all the roadways in the project area. Street trees, landscaping, pedestrian lighting, also elements that we are proposing throughout the project area. So I hope this is easy to see, but we're going to walk through a few of the project areas so that you can get a look at what we're proposing in each area. So I'll try to orient you. This is the western end of the project limits, and this is the Charter Road at Mass Ave intersection, so the entrance to the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District. And a main improvement here is the fact that this intersection will become signalized in the proposed condition. So currently, we talked about the sight distance issue and the safety of pedestrians and vehicles trying to maneuver in that intersection. And along with the signalization, as well as the realignment of Charter Road, which currently comes in at a skew at Mass Ave, this will help the flow of traffic through there, as well as address the pedestrian and bicyclist concern there. So what you see here is you see 5-foot bike lanes, both sides of all roadways here. You see sidewalks that are separated from the roadway with a vegetated buffer and street trees where possible. And a dedicated right turn lane is provided for traffic turning from Charter Road onto Mass Ave. You also have a left turn lane onto Charter Road. So from Mass Ave, you have dedicated left turn lanes on both approaches on Mass Ave, as well as a through and a right turn lane for those vehicles that are not turning left there. You can also see here a bus stop. It's the area that looks like a brick area and a pullover, and that's currently proposed for such routes as the Cross Acton Transit that stops in the vicinity of that area today. So this will provide a safer accommodation for that bus route. This is an image, so if you are driving westbound on Mass Ave, approaching Charter Road, you can see Charter Road coming in at kind of an angle there. This is the existing condition, obviously, and we can look at a proposed rendering. So you can see the dedicated left turn lane provided, as well as the through and shared right turn lane, the pedestrian accommodations, and the bicycle lane and bicycle box that we can discuss it a bit further. So moving in the eastbound direction on Mass Ave, this is the Main Street Mass Ave intersection. The improvements here consist of additional turning lanes to address congestion and delays, as well as new signals and pedestrian and bike accommodations. Mass Ave eastbound will have 2 left turn lanes and a shared through and right lane. Mass Ave westbound will consist of a left turn lane and a shared through right lane. Main Street northbound will consist of a dedicated left turn lane, through lane, and a shared through right lane. Main Street southbound will have a dedicated right turn lane and a through lane. Pedestrian crosswalks are provided on all approaches here, and the signals will include a dedicated pedestrian phase, meaning all of the crosswalks will be timed at the same time so that everyone is crossing in each direction. These crossing times will be based on the standard 3.5 feet per second, and that crossing distance for all the crosswalks will be timed based on the longest crosswalk at this intersection. Bicycle accommodations here include 2-stage left turn bike boxes, which we are going to explain a bit further on the operation of those. You can also see the vegetated buffer between the roadway and the sidewalk, the street trees, there's pedestrian lighting proposed, as well as a small gathering node you can somewhat see in front of the Verizon property there. So continuing eastbound on Mass Ave, we reach the Community Lane intersection. This is the intersection adjacent to the CVS and the TD Bank. The project proposes to signalize this intersection of Mass Ave at Community Lane for safety and improved operation. Mass Ave approaches will all consist of a dedicated left turn lane and a shared through right turn lane. On Community Lane southbound, a shared through left turn lane and a dedicated right turn lane will be provided. Bicycle and pedestrian accommodations are provided through sidewalks, curb ramps, 5-foot bicycle lanes, and bike boxes for safe movements of bicyclists through the intersection. What you can't see, you can see one landscape island in this image. Further east, there's another landscape island with a crosswalk there. We can talk about how those will operate and the safety of the crosswalks at unsignalized intersections also. So now we are looking at the existing condition on Community Lane, looking southbound toward Mass Ave. This is the existing condition and a rendering of the proposed condition. You can see here the dedicated right turn lane, the pedestrian, the sidewalks, and the separation from those, as well as some of the street trees that would be proposed. So now we're switching to the north side of the Main Street Mass Ave intersection, and we are looking at Main Street at the intersection with Community Lane. So we just looked at the south end of Community Lane. This is the north end of Community Lane. This intersection, actually just prior to reaching this intersection on Main Street, you can see the Golf and Sarah Jane Court. There will be a left turn lane there, actually in both directions, for access to the businesses there prior to reaching Community Lane. Community Lane at this location at Main Street will remain unsignalized. You can see a crosswalk crossing Main Street there, and that will be that will also have a rapid flashing beacon, again, that we can discuss how those operate shortly. Community Lane northbound will operate as a right turn only at this location. Main Street southbound will include a dedicated left turn lane for vehicles turning onto Community Lane. A through lane will allow for those traveling southbound to continue on without delay at that intersection. I talked about the crosswalk provided there for pedestrian safety. You can see the sidewalks, the separation, the vegetated buffers, and the street trees at this location. So just a bit further north, this is the northern limits of Main Street. You can just barely see the intersection of Community Lane in this image. So this is the northern extents. This is adjacent to the Hosmer House, the historical property on Main Street, and the Not Your Average Joe's shopping plaza there, as well as the Dunkin' Donuts. One of the main improvements here is you can see we've consolidated the driveway to the plaza and the Dunkin' Donuts. So there will be only one driveway there, and a left turn lane will be provided for those vehicles traveling southbound on Main Street, so that it does not delay those who are continuing on in the southbound direction. A crosswalk and rapid flashing beacon is proposed for pedestrian crossing safety there, just almost in front of the Hosmer House. There's a landscape island there that also helps, where pedestrians can wait before crossing the other side of the roadway. You can see in this image that we have street trees and obviously pedestrian sidewalks on both sides. We have street trees on just the Not Your Average Joe's Plaza side of the roadway there, which is a result of trying to minimize impacts to the Hosmer House property, so that there are no permanent takings on that property. So again, we'll look at another rendering. This is Main Street. You can see the Hosmer House on the right. This is southbound, just before you reach the Hosmer House. And this is a rendering of the proposed condition, showing the landscaped median, the sidewalks, and some of the streetscape there. So this is the last slide of this kind. We're looking at the southern end of Main Street now at Beverly Road. So you're just in the area just past Bolodrome and the Sorrento's Plaza. You see the Kmart parking lot on the left. In this location, we're proposing a two-way left turn lane through the center of the roadway there to provide access to the businesses on both sides of the roadway without delaying those that are driving through. A crosswalk with a rectangular rapid flashing beacon will be provided near the intersection with Beverly Road. That is an unsignalized intersection there. Pedestrian accommodations include sidewalks on both sides of Main Street with a stamped cement concrete or vegetated buffer depending on the location and the property constraints. Street trees will be provided where they can be accommodated in the buffer, and a landscape median is proposed at the most southern limits to sort of welcome you into the Kelley's Corner area, which is consistent with the other 4 approaches to that intersection. So I'm going to pass this over to Rebecca. She's with GPI also. She's a traffic engineer, and she's going to go through how these proposed improvements at the Main Street Mass Ave intersection will improve congestion and delays through that intersection. It's a bit detailed, so bear with us here.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. Good evening. As Lindsay said, I am Rebecca Brown with GPI. I'm a senior project manager working on traffic analysis. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through a little bit of the traffic operations through the area that will result from the project and kind of what we see out there as operations today. So this slide is showing you the Massachusetts Avenue at Main Street intersection, and this is showing what the existing, or what the delays will look like under existing geometry conditions. What you see here in green represents the 50th percentile queue, which is generally the average queue that you would see on each approach. And the red that you see on here is the 95th percentile queue, which is generally what's considered to be the maximum queue that would occur on each cycle of the light. So you can see here that especially on Main Street, northbound and southbound, that there are some pretty extensive queues that occur. In the eastbound direction, those queues back up all the way into the Charter Road intersection. And this is just showing the Mass Ave at Main Street intersection. So if we were to look at the other ones, you would see queuing that extends beyond Charter Road as well, and beyond Community Lane on the easterly end as well. But you can see that there's some pretty extensive queues that are occurring at this intersection. So this slide here is showing you under proposed conditions what that queuing would then look like. So you can see that particularly for the Main Street approaches going northbound and southbound, that those queues go from extending off of the page to being cut down quite significantly. And when we looked at timing the intersection, one of our goals was to make sure that the queues would not extend into the adjacent intersections. So we have intentionally looked at the geometry and the signal timing of this intersection to ensure that it won't back up into the adjacent intersections. So coming southbound on Main Street, you can see that the average queues are actually quite short, but the maximum queue backs up right about to the Community Lane intersection, but will not go through it, so it should not impact the operations at the Community Lane intersection. The same thing actually occurs headed westbound on Massachusetts Avenue, where that backs up almost to the Community Lane signal, but not quite into it. And then the same headed eastbound for headed towards Charter Road. So this slide here is showing you what the overall intersection delay looks like. And again, this is just for the main intersection, the Massachusetts Avenue and Main Street intersection, where you can see here that under existing conditions, the overall intersection is experiencing about 52 seconds of delay per vehicle. Now, some vehicles obviously are a lot more than that, some are less than that, but on average, it's about 52 seconds per vehicle. In our 2024 opening year conditions, if you follow kind of the red line up, that is going to be 79 seconds per vehicle, roughly. So the issue is that this intersection is pretty much at capacity, and during the peak hours is actually operating over capacity. So if you start adding any growth to this intersection, that the delays go up very significantly, very quickly. When we get out to our 2038 design year, we're looking at delays of approximately 107 seconds on average with the existing geometry and signal timings that are out here. So the green line represents our proposed improvements. And with the proposed improvements under an opening year condition, the overall intersection delay drops to 42 seconds. But what you see is that the maximum delays through the intersection drop significantly. And as I mentioned, we're optimizing that intersection operation so that all of the approaches experience similar queues that won't back up into the adjacent intersections. So some of the movements will get slightly longer, some of them will get significantly better, but the overall will be about 42 seconds of delay per vehicle going through the intersection. When we implement these improvements, they're built in to have substantial additional capacity, so that even under a 2038 future year condition, we're still only at 49.9 seconds of delay, so we're still well below what the intersection is operating at even today. The queues, however, will be a lot shorter than what they are today because of the additional storage lanes that will be provided. So that will cut the queues down significantly. And we'll still have excess capacity. This intersection will still be in the 2038 condition, only operating at about 85% of its capacity. So we could still see some continued growth before we start to see that sharp peak that you see with the red line in this graph. So one of the things that Lindsay mentioned was that there are a series of these rectangular rapid flashing beacons that are being proposed at a number of locations within the study area. These will be located at the intersection of Main Street and Community Lane, just a little bit north of the Hosmer House on Main Street, and then at the easterly end of Massachusetts Avenue, right near the Victor School, and then on Main Street, right near Beverly Road, are the 4 locations where these will be located. So what these signals do is they really accentuate the crosswalk and draw the driver's attention to them. They have 2 flashing beacons on either side, and these signs are provided on both sides of the roadway to provide additional driver feedback. And when a pedestrian presses the button, the lights will start flashing. They will flash for a predetermined amount of time that is set based on the amount of time it takes a pedestrian to cross that crosswalk, traveling at 3.5 feet per second. If desired, they can be set for a slower walking speed, particularly if it's anticipated that there could be pedestrians who may be walking slower at some of these crosswalks, or larger groups of pedestrians that could be extended. But it will flash for a predetermined amount of time to allow for a pedestrian to cross the roadway. It does not stop cars in the sense of having a red, yellow, and green signal, but it does provide the added feedback so that vehicles are aware that there is a pedestrian that wants to cross the intersection and that they will stop and see them at that location. So one of the other features that Lindsay mentioned was these 2-stage left turn bike boxes. So a lot of you may have seen more traditional bike boxes that are right in front of a stop line. You'll see kind of a green area that's typically used for bicyclists to be able to travel in the bike lane up along the right-hand side of traffic, and then they can pull into the standard bike box to make their turn so that they can be at the head of the queue when the light turns green. One of the issues with those, though, is that if a bicyclist has to cross more than one lane, a light could turn green before the bicyclist gets all the way across into the lane that they want to get to, leaving them stranded out in the intersection between travel lanes, and that can be a particularly uncomfortable situation. For example, if you look at the northbound approach here, on Main Street, where there are 2 through lanes that are proposed. If a bicyclist were to try and use a standard bike box to travel to the front and then cross over to make a left-hand turn and get to that left turn lane, they could get across the first through lane and the light could turn green on them, and now they're trapped between 2 through lanes that are moving, and so they're not able to turn. So what we've proposed instead to do is to provide a 2-stage left turn where the bicyclist will remain in their dedicated bike lane. They will continue straight through the intersection, and then they will wait in a dedicated bicycle box on the far side of the intersection in order to take their left-hand turn when the next through movement goes. So for example, somebody headed northbound. I'm going to step away from the mic, and will people be able to hear me? I just kind of wanted to point to which of the bike boxes people have to use. So if someone is headed northbound, they would travel up here and they would stop in that far two-stage bike box. When the westbound light turns green, they would then be able to continue on to the west along along Route 111. So these provided that added benefit of safety for the bicyclist. Let's see, there's a couple other things. They do facilitate the left turn movements. One of the other reasons that they are often proposed, even if you look at Route 111 headed westbound, you can see that we've proposed two-stage bike boxes in that direction too. One of the reasons is because that left turn movement is a permitted left turn, which means that it will see a green ball or a flashing yellow arrow, and it won't have a dedicated turning phase throughout the entire time. It will be allowed to go when the opposing traffic is seeing a green signal. For a bicyclist to try and cross in that movement, a bicyclist will have to look at opposing traffic and find a very long gap to make that left turn phase. And that can be uncomfortable for a bicyclist to be sitting out in traffic waiting for that long gap while vehicles are queuing up behind them. So the two-stage left turn allows them to continue straight through and make that left turn in a safe manner without having all those vehicles queued up behind them. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Lindsay, who's going to walk us through some more of the project.
Thank you, Becca. So we've gone through all the proposed improvements, and one of the next questions is related to construction. So when it comes to construction, how is traffic going to be affected? So construction of this project is anticipated to begin around end of 2021 or the start of 2022, with the duration estimated at around 2 construction seasons or approximately 24 months. During this time, paving and roadway construction would be anticipated to occur during off-peak hours, as well as drainage and utility work during off-peak hours. Roadside work that can be accommodated during regular construction hours will be, and potentially alternating traffic would be implemented if required. The idea during construction will be to limit the impacts to abutters and businesses, maintain driveway accesses, and maintain pedestrian accesses throughout the project area during construction. Before we get to construction, we should note that we do have a bit of environmental permitting to get through. This is the 25% design phase, right? So we have to carry this through into a final design, but before this goes into construction, must file a series of environmental permits listed here. I won't go into each of these, but they all have their certain requirements and thresholds. And we trigger a lot of these based on the project scope, as well as adjacency to environmental resource areas, such as wetlands, as well as historic areas, such as the Hosmer House. These are all kind of part of the permitting requirements. Most of these will take place during the 75% and 100% design process, just because at that point the project plans are more final, whereas these are a preliminary design plan. So a look at the project schedule from where we stand today at the public hearing. We will be moving into a 75% design submission, hopefully just prior to fall of this year. We go through a series of Mass DOT town reviews and Mass DOT reviews at each design submission. So then we will proceed into 100% design submission once we incorporate all comments and feedback from 75. That will be probably next year around the summer. And then anticipated construction, like I said, in around 2022. After a final design, there will be some right-of-way processes that take place, and some of the environmental permitting we talked about prior to construction. So you're all provided with, there are handouts at the door that have mail-in comment sheets. If you would like to submit those, that's the best way. We will respond to written comments along with Mass DOT. There's also an email address here, a DOT feedback email address, if you'd like to submit a comment there as well. On any of the comments, include the project file number, which is written on the screen, as well as the name of the project. So I will pass it back to Mass DOT, who is going to talk about the public comment period here before we start that.
Before we open the meeting to questions and comments, I would explain the meeting procedure. First, as stated previously, the purpose of this meeting is to solicit your input regarding this project. As the plans are not yet complete, we may not be able to answer all of your questions or respond to all of your comments at this time. Please use the last page of the handout for written comments within 10 days of today's date. Next, we ask that anyone who wishes to have his or her comments entered into the official hearing transcript, please stand up, identify yourself by name and affiliation, whether you are an abutter, local official, or concerned citizen, and spell your last name. This is necessary in order for us to obtain a full verbatim transcript as required by law. It is normal procedure to ask elected officials to offer their comments first. Are there any federal or state officials who would like to speak at this time?
Good evening. I'm State Senator Jamie Eldridge, last name Eldridge, also a resident of Acton. Thank you very much for the presentation. And as a resident of Acton and as the state senator for Acton for the past 10 years, I've been a longtime proponent, first of all, of the state funding to fix Kelley's Corner, including advocating to get the $14 million on the most recent tip. As a resident of Acton, I pass through Kelley's Corner almost daily, and I'm often at the intersection interacting with constituents and sometimes at different events where people are, gaining attention for different events. And I have found it to be an intersection that is particularly unfriendly pedestrians trying to cross the street. I'm seeing a lot more people who are bicycling through Acton now. It's a very difficult intersection to come through as a bicyclist, despite the fact that we have two rail trails that are sort of on the opposite sides of Acton. So I think that this design would help improve not only pedestrian safety, but also encourage more people to bicycle. I think also the proposed design that I just saw would make it a more attractive area as well. I'm very proud that Acton has a number of villages, a number of quote-unquote centers, but it doesn't have an intersection as busy as this one, and I think it would be improved by this proposed design by the state. And I know a lot of local officials have worked very hard on it. I know there's been a lot of advocates doing presentations on this as well. So I want to express my strong support, and also just to reiterate that this is a project that I have fought for a very, very long time to secure that state funding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. I'm State Representative Tammy Govea. My first name is spelled T-A-M-I. My last name is G-O-U-V-E-I-A. I am also a resident of Acton, and I'm also a parent of 2 teenage boys. And I have oftentimes worried about the fact that children, middle school and high schoolers, are oftentimes walking down that area to cross the street to go to, not Your Average Joe's or Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks or any of the other facilities that young people like to go to after school when they're hanging out with their friends, which is very age appropriate. And I'm oftentimes seeing students standing there right on the corner, which just has always made me extremely nervous. So I'm really excited about the design here with the focus on values of safety, access, and reducing our carbon emissions. And I really see a lot of that kind of effort put into this design, and I really want to thank everybody who's done really tremendous work to really engage the community in a very thoughtful process and comment period. Like the senator said, I also see great opportunity to connect different parts of the town together with these really important bike lanes. We know that there is tremendous interest in people using bicycles to get to and from the train station or to different parts of the town, and having a real safe place for folks to be able to use their bicycles in this area is critically important. I also appreciate the fact that 157 new street trees will be planted along this way. I think that's, in many ways, this is an entry from Route 2 directly into our town. I think making the space more attractive, more beautiful, while also being environmental and really providing a source of capturing carbon is also critically important. So for these reasons, I'm here to, lend my support to this effort and to all the tremendous work that's been done here. Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Good evening, I'm Josh Badarian. I will be reading this letter submitted for public comment on behalf of Representative Jennifer Benson, who represents the southern side of Acton and the 37th Middlesex District. This was submitted via mail to Patricia Leavenworth, actually today, so hopefully it gets there. Dear Ms. Leavenworth, I write to you in support of the proposed improvement project at the intersection of Route 27 and 111, commonly referred to as Kelley's Corner, in the town of Acton. I commend the work by MassDOT and the town getting this project included in the state transportation improvement plan, for 2019 to 2023. Kelley's Corner is one of the busiest intersections in Acton, given its proximity to Route 2, as well as shopping centers, restaurants, office buildings, and the town's middle school, high school, and athletic fields. People traveling to and from the South Acton commuter rail station also pass through the intersection. Residents and visitors to Acton will greatly benefit from new crosswalks, sidewalks, signage, and traffic signals, and the realignment of nearby intersections. The proposed changes to the area will promote multimodal transportation, increase safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, and make traffic at the intersection more manageable. I am happy to provide my support for this project, and I look forward to its completion. Sincerely, Jennifer Benson, State Representative. Benson is B as in boy, E-N-S-O-N. Badarian is B as in boy, E-D-A-R-I-A-N. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Diane Baum. Last name is B-A-U-M. I am currently the chair of the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee. I did not prepare comments for you this evening, but I wanted to come by to express my support for this project. We did deliberate briefly as a school committee after being presented with the Kelley's Corner initiative, and the school committee strongly feels that this is a safety issue for the students in Acton-Boxborough. Kelley's Corner's proximity to the Charter Road campus, which houses 2 elementary schools, the junior high, the high school, a preschool, and the administration building, makes it a very popular place for students to go after school. It also makes it a popular place for families, visitors, teachers. So this project is very important to us. We feel that these improvements are critical to maintaining the safety of students who want to walk to Kelley's Corner and then back to school. And the congestion right now, that makes it really challenging for buses and cars to get to school and get home from school, will be greatly alleviated by this project. So we thank you for your work.
Thank you. Are there any local officials who would like to speak at this time?
Good evening. My name is Christopher Prahl, spelled P as in Paul, R-E-H-L. I'm the Traffic Safety Officer for the Town of Acton Police Department. Through this design, we feel that this is a safe design, just not only for the motorists, for the pedestrians and the bicyclists through this area. Right now, there are a lot of problems as outlined with your presentation, and we feel through these improvements, it will hit all three of those and promote a safer environment for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. This information meeting, this public hearing is now open to the public, and we welcome your questions and comments.
Hi, my name is Phoebe Conant, Conant, and I'm actually here on behalf of the Acton Historical Society. I wanted to address a few of our comments relating to our experience working with the Acton Planning Department and the Mass DOT on the Kelley's Corner section, which is in front of our headquarters. The Hosmer House, as has been mentioned, was a historic home built in 1760. It's on the National Register and is a site of our museum and research library. We knew that the proposed project was going to result in street widening and frontage taking, and would change our building's relationship to the street. It's already fairly close, and also change the relationship of our three-building site as a whole. But as a member of the Acton community, the Historical Society supports the improvement and accessibility goals of the Kelley's Corner project. The project also offered us an opportunity to rethink the landscaping around the Hosmer House in general, which led us to apply for and receive a Community Preservation Act grant, which is helping us to open up the site and enhance the design of our own site. Over the last year, the Acton Historical Society has been working with the Planning Department, Mass DOT, and the Acton Historical Commission to minimize the impact of the Kelley's Corner work on our property. Much of this engagement is centered around the state and federal requirements for a Section 106 historical review to determine adverse effect, and this was overseen by the Acton Historical Commission. Kristen Guichard of the Planning Department was very engaged and forthcoming with different options to minimize the loss of frontage. We especially want to thank Mary Hafferty of the Mass DOT Cultural Resources Unit, who with her staff attended a meeting here and offered new options that became the basis for the final agreement. Also a thank you to our town manager, John Mangiarati, who played an early and positive role in supporting the final compromise in the most recent 25% filing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John Peterson, I'm a citizen. I live in Patriots Hill, which is not particularly impacted by this area. Peterson is Petersen. In the proposed improvements, the statement reads, pedestrian and bicycle accommodations will be provided on both sides of all roadways within the project area. And indeed, the plan which has been presented shows this symmetrical design. However, most of Acton, where there are sidewalks, is asymmetrical. There's a sidewalk on one side. All of the effort is put into one side of the roadway. Another thing that impacts particularly the area of Kelley's Corner is Route 2. And Route 2, as everybody who travels through Acton realizes, in many ways divides the town in two parts. The significance of this is with respect to pedestrians and bicycles, the ability to generate westbound trips along Mass Ave is extremely limited on the north side of the road. On the south side of the road, there's an opportunity to connect to run up Piper Road and to connect to, I'll get this right, Piper Ridge and South Acton. So that is a question of, if you look outside the project area and say, who can feed pedestrian and bike traffic? If you could get, the project area to accommodate two-way traffic on the south side of Mass Ave, put all of the effort into the south side, not spend any effort in front of the Roach Brothers Plaza, I think there really is the opportunity to generate a lot more bicycle and pedestrian traffic from that neighborhood. I have previously, sent these comments to Kristen, so they may already be part of your file, but I will also send them in to the website. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Starr of 6 Littlefield Road, 20-year Acton resident, and along with myself, Chris Bailey and I own the property on the corner of 27 and 111. It's the, people call it the Bueno-Isano property. I'm also a concerned parent of a 14-year-old that goes to R.J. Gray Junior High, so I'm also here as a concerned parent as well. I'd like to first thank the town, the steering committee, MassDOT, and GPI for all their years of hard work. We're looking forward to seeing, you know, some of your ideas come to, some of your visions coming to fruition, and really are excited to see that. We clearly all have an opportunity to make Kelley's Corner a better place for us to live, work, dine, shop, socialize, and yes, drive through. While there are great opportunities for making these improvements, KC is, the initial plans for KC had a lot of shortcomings. And we worked with the town, my partner and I worked with the town to transform the initial plans, which took basically almost half of, or over half of the parking away from Bueno-Isano. And now we've come up with a win-win solution where Bueno-Isano will preserve 100% of their parking, and we're delighted to see that new parking arrangement come to light. So it's done by shifting the roadway closer to the Verizon lot, where it was less damaging to local businesses. Well, we applaud the town's creativity and MassDOT and everybody here's creativity. Want to make sure that there are 3 areas that are addressed going forward. First, we're hoping that the new plan is indeed the plan that will be carried forward. The planning department has indicated that the zoning is actually more compliant with the new plan. So we're excited to see and hope to see that the plan that's articulated and in the new plans is going to be the one that's carried forward, and we're not going to go, it's not going to be watered down, or we're going to take steps back. Second, I'm concerned about the temporary impacts to local businesses. I was involved in the Trapello Road redevelopment project, and it was a massive massive local MassDOT project, kind of like the Kelley's Corner project. And a lot of the local businesses suffered throughout that temporary process of ripping up the streets and redesigning the streets. Of course, today, Trapello Road is a much nicer place to drive through and be and walk and do business, but we want to make sure that the town and the group of planners before me are just sensitive to the local business concerns, because, you know, their livelihoods are at stake. Third and finally, I wanted to say that my partner and I share some of the concerns that Green Acton, other concerned citizens have put before you. And we want to make sure that their concerns and issues are addressed like ours were. We think that they deserve some fair consideration. Larger streets may, or wider streets may have result in faster cars and less pedestrian safety. I know that people at GPI are working hard to make that not the case, but we want to make sure that Green Acton and other concerned citizens and concerned parents are heard, and their concerns are taken seriously and really thought through. Provided that all 3 of these areas of concerns are addressed, that is, that the plan is indeed the plan. Second, that the temporary impacts are mitigated to local businesses. And third, other groups like Green Acton are addressed. We plan to support the plan, and we're excited to be a part of the, this new vision of Kelley's Corner, because we think it'll be a much nicer place to walk and do business and be in. So thank you so much for your hard work, and we appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Star, S-T-A-R-R. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Shauna Wilkinson, Wilkinson. I am a concerned citizen from Acton. I'm actually from West Acton in the Ethan Allen neighborhood. I guess my first concern would be the environmental impact of this project. I've heard a lot of positive things, and the project pictures and renderings are very pretty looking, but there are going to be some removal of trees and so forth, and I heard that there's an intent to plant or put new trees in their place. I was wondering if you were using mature trees or younger trees that are going to take a period of time to grow and provide the same carbon benefits that are currently there. Secondly, when you have been calculating the congestion and all that, are you taking into account the proposal for a large number of townhomes that may be placed on the Kelley's Corner, the Kmart parcel? Because that really kind of ratchets up the level of congestion of traffic, if that's the case. And then my third question is, I'm a parent. I have a 14-year-old and an almost 9-year-old. And my 14-year-old crosses that intersection almost every day. And I hold my breath every time she does it. I appreciate that you're giving time and thought to pedestrian safety. But pretend that I'm a high school kid. It's a stretch. But, what are they going to see when they're at that intersection? So are the pedestrian walks, are there going to be flashing lights? Are there going to be numerical seconds, like countdowns, so they're aware of that? Is there also going to be noise? I'm mostly blind. So if I'm walking around with my daughter in that section, I can't see numbers counting down, and the flashes of light really aren't that helpful to me. So I actually rely on my children for that. So I would ask that, when you're considering the ADA requirements and so forth, are you talking about also adding the numbers, the flashing lights, and sound to the pedestrian crossways? Because I would compare myself to a small group of kids that go to Starbucks on a daily basis and are crossing this intersection, and they're on their phones, they're talking to friends, they're distracted walkers. And you're adding car lanes, people are trying to beat the light, and so, I just really want to get a sense of what they are actually going to see when they're standing in front of these crosswalks. So that's it, but I thank you very much for your work. Thank you.
So to respond to your question about what people will see when they come to the crosswalks, so there will be countdown signal heads on all of the approaches so that people are aware how much time is left when they're crossing. There will also be APS signals, so there will be a chirping sound that's heard when the signal is not active, letting you know that you're not supposed to walk. And then when you can walk, it will actually tell you that you can walk. When you press the push button, there will be vibro-tactile push buttons so that when you press it, it will vibrate to let you know that the call has been received. and then it will continue to chirp until it is time for you to walk. So all of that will be provided to assist people to walk across the intersection.
And in terms of the plantings, are you replacing them with mature trees?
That, I don't know, Lindsay.
So the full landscape design and specifications and things like that haven't been fully developed yet.
Okay.
We wouldn't anticipate bringing fully mature trees in. That's not typically how this would happen. But the amount of trees are intended to replace what's there and create a vegetated area that can make up for what has to be removed for the project.
But there'll be a clearing so that from the sidewalks and the bicycle paths so that kids or bicyclists aren't, going onto the pedestrian walkways or the bike paths, like from behind a tree? Is there going to be a clear view for cars?
Not sure I understand the question.
I'm sorry, in order to get the verbatim transcript, you need to keep introducing yourself. We cannot, this is a design public hearing. It's going to be hard to go back
I've never
and forth.
designed a construction project, so my apologies.
Right.
But I'm just wondering, are you going to keep the walkways and the bike paths clear from vegetation so that people aren't, biking or walking, out into the roadways, even given the walkways?
Right, yeah, so each place where there is a pedestrian crosswalk that's proposed, the sidewalk will come back up against the roadway so that there won't be trees in that area blocking so that pedestrians are visible as they're standing at the edge of the roadway.
And then the traffic congestions that you've been talking about, are you taking into account what the proposal for the Kelley Kmart parcel is?
Yeah, so in our analysis, we actually performed two different analysis conditions. One was a 2038 future year condition that didn't include any other known development projects. We just used a growth rate that would project out to 2038. Then we also included another analysis period that included redevelopment of that Kmart site, which it had, I want to say it was around 150 or 160, I'm not sure the exact number of residential units that were on that property, plus some retail and a supermarket that were proposed. And then that also included the property that's back behind the CVS, where there was some retail redevelopment that could happen in that area too. I think it's around 30,000 square feet of retail that could occur in that area. So those were also included in that second set of analysis conditions. So what you saw in the presentation tonight did...
I couldn't see it.
But that did include that additional traffic from those two other development projects.
So it was the second example that
Correct.
included that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Judith Ehrenstein. I live in Acton, in West Acton. That's A-R-O-N.
Can you speak up, please?
Yep, A-R-O-N-S-T-E-I-N. I'm coordinator of Mothers Out Front in Acton. We're an environmental group that works particularly right now on gas leaks. And it's kind of a comment and a question. I just wanted to be sure that, so there are 3 known gas leaks on Main Street, moving down sort of across from Hosmer House, Not Your Average Joe's, and then kind of around the stationery store. And just want to make sure that there's coordination with National Grid in fixing those leaks. They've been on the record since 2017, reported numerous times, and we also have Acton measured the size of these leaks, and one of them is 4,000 square feet across an area. So that's a very large leak, which is leaking methane, which we've been trying in Acton and around the state to have these leaks fixed. Methane is an extremely potent greenhouse gas. So I just want to be sure that that gets coordinated when the roads get opened and changed with National Grid.
Thank you.
It is a question. Do you know if that coordination is happening?
I mean, do you know? I haven't.
We've reached out to National Grid to discuss any kind of upgrades or any kind of issues that they have in the area, and We haven't mentioned specifically any gas leaks, but in any future conversation we have with them, we can bring that up.
Yes, this is their reporting of gas leaks, which they have to report by law every year. So they know the gas leaks that are there, and I believe our town has, I'm not quite sure what the wording is, but if there's a repair that needs to happen and the road work is happening, there's fines if they don't do it, if they want to do it after the repairs, et cetera. So yes, it's important that it gets coordinated. Thank you.
Deborah Symes, last name is S-I-M-E-S. I'm an Acton resident. And two quick things. One is, just to make sure that I understand this and other people understand this, in this plan, people who are coming on Route 27 southbound, who want to get to 111 eastbound and eventually Route 2, there will be signs directing them to use Community Lane to do that, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Cool. But is it the obverse? I never know obverse, reverse. The other way, if people are coming west on 111, they can go to Kelley's Corner and still do that right turn, correct?
That is correct.
Cool. All right. My other question is this. I think there are those, I can't remember the acronym, the flashy business, the flashy crosswalk things. I see that there are two of those on 27 north of the main intersection. One appears to be sort of at like where the Gulf Station is, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah, one of them is at Community Lane itself.
Right there, yeah.
And then the other one is right near the Hosmer House. It's just barely north of the Hosmer House. And that one is partly to facilitate the large number of students that come through that sort of informal trail and then cut across to go over to the Dunkin' Donuts.
That is exactly my point. So the trail is between those two.
It is, yes.
So we are confident the kids are going to go a few feet north or a few feet south?
Yeah, it's within their desire line, so that they should,
that was
hopefully, can never control teenagers, but they should use that trail.
All righty, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Tara Fredericks, West Acton, F-R-I-E-D-R-I-C-H-S. I can see that a lot of good can come from a project like this, and I supported the earlier designs, which I think we should go back to because it was a much more lo-fi, people-centric, nature-centric design. This is all about congestion. I can tell that it's all about cars and moving cars, and so I object to that. I think that a lot of this could be done without the turning lanes, the extra lights, but nonetheless, MAPC has cited this project as being for target zone for high-density housing, and there's a rezoning proposal for the Kmart parcels to accommodate, looks like hundreds of condos, and I guess my question to the engineer is, can that safely be done without this project?
So there are a number of reasons why we've proposed the design that we have and why we've added some additional travel lanes over what was previously proposed. So we did do some alternatives analysis to look at what would be the actual impacts on the intersection. If we were to, for example, on the northbound approach on Main Street, provide only one through lane instead of providing the two through lanes that are proposed there. And what we saw is that with only a single through lane, we had queues that were about 725 feet longer during the PM peak hour than what's proposed now. So those would have backed up through the Beverly Road intersection all the way down to the Kelley Road intersection, which isn't even shown on these plans because it's that far down if we only had one travel lane in that direction. And that's still assuming that we're keeping two eastbound left turn lanes. If we remove the two eastbound left turn lanes, that queue gets even longer than that. So we also looked at what would happen to traffic operations if we removed the eastbound left turn lane, and that queue then, so right now the eastbound left turn has a queue of about 250 feet. That would extend to about 550 feet, which would go back through the Charter Road intersection. and could start to cause gridlocking between the intersections if it did go back through that intersection. It also increased the overall intersection delay. So let me get that number. So it increased the overall intersection delay by about 38 seconds per vehicle with the eastbound left turn lane. With the northbound lane, it increased the delay through the intersection by 25 seconds per vehicle. So if you take out both of those lanes, you're compounding that impact and increasing the delay even more than that. So because of that, we had to propose those additional lanes to be able to accommodate the traffic through the intersection.
So I just want to make sure I understand, so a goodly portion of the infrastructure is to accommodate that growth?
Well, as far as the number of lanes that are proposed, it is to accommodate the traffic operations through the intersection and ensure that queues don't back up through the intersection. Obviously, reducing the queues has a large impact on the pedestrian operations, particularly where there are a number of unsignalized pedestrian crossings or crossings where we have these rectangular rapid flash beacons. If you have long queues that are extending through those, then pedestrians are trying to cross between queued up cars, and it can be very difficult for vehicles in the opposite direction to see pedestrians that are walking between queued traffic as well. So these queues will not extend into any of those unsignalized pedestrian crossings, but if we were to take out those lanes, you would have those queues that would be extending through. So it is also a pedestrian benefit to provide these additional travel lanes.
Thank you. And so the projections that I looked at, first of all, I noticed that there was a historical reduction in the traffic, actual traffic. And I was curious what the projection growth rate is, and we got an answer that seemed really large. And I was wondering if you could just tell us what that percentage per year growth rate was.
Sure.
Is.
So the percentage growth rate that we've seen in this area was based on Mass DOT count stations, and that was showing a 0.2% per year increase from 2004 up through, I believe it was 2016 was the most recent year that we looked at. So that was showing a 0.2% per year growth rate. What we used in our study was a 0.5% per year, which is still very conservative. Typically 1% is what's used in most studies, but we used a 0.5% per year growth. And what that accounts for is general background population growth in the area, vehicles that are coming from other communities that may be cutting through this area. And then, as I mentioned, we also did an additional analysis that looked at sort of known other development projects like the Kmart project and the CVS project, but those were separate analysis when we looked at those as well. But that 0.5% growth rate not only accounts for sort of the unknown element and general population growth, but it also accounts for the fact that this intersection right now is operating at capacity. So there may be a lot of additional demand that isn't able to get through this intersection. Those vehicles may be taking side roads. They may be avoiding this area right now because they don't want to travel through this congested area. And when we fix some of those issues and provide additional capacity, vehicles may start coming through here that are taking other routes now. So that's what that 0.5% growth rate was used to account.
Thank you. Did you include this phenomena of people filling in the traffic because now they realize that they don't have to wait as long? So were the projections including that?
Yeah, so that's what the 0.5% growth rate was intended to do, to account for some of that occurring in addition to what the general growth has been experiencing over the last 10 years, which was that 0.2%.
Thank you. I have one more question. I'm going to cede the mic and stand in line again because I don't want to dominate the questioning. The Charter Road light was originally not approved by the state, and that made sense to me because I looked at the projections and it showed like hundreds more cars than can actually fit in the site. So I thought, oh, that made sense. But then some weeks later, the charter road light was finally, was then approved. So I'm wondering what the reasoning was behind that. Thank you.
Sure. So there are traffic signal warrants that we have to do that evaluate whether or not an intersection is actually warranted to install a traffic signal. So we collected 12-hour turning movement counts at the intersection that you have to, there are a few different warranting conditions. One is a peak hour warrant, which means that the traffic volumes in the peak hour have to exceed a certain threshold. And then there is a 4-hour warrant, which means for 4 one-hour periods throughout the day, volumes have to exceed a certain threshold. And then there's also an 8-hour warrant, which is very similar, that volumes for 8 hours of the day must exceed certain thresholds. So we do at this intersection meet the peak hour warrant based on traffic that's entering and exiting during the peak hours of operation for the schools, the morning arrival and afternoon dismissal periods. We also meet the 4-hour warrant. Mass DOT was looking for us to meet the 8-hour warrant too, but obviously with this being a school, during those off-peak times of the early morning and the afternoon dismissal, there isn't a lot of traffic. So we were a little bit short of actually meeting those thresholds, and that's why the intersection was originally denied for installation of a traffic signal. But there's a lot of other elements going on at this intersection aside from just the traffic volumes, and that is obviously the safety of the intersection. So the sight distances at that intersection are very poor, especially if you're coming out of Charter Road and you're looking to the left towards the Route 27 intersection, where those sight lines are inadequate. Now, in order for us to be able to get beyond the sight distance, we would have actually had to take the road down, I believe it was about 18 inches, which would have had tremendous environmental impacts and cause us to remove even more trees. We'd have to push larger walls in and everything to be able to construct that. So the traffic signal allows us to overcome that obstacle of the sight distance issue. It also is a safety benefit in terms of the number of crashes that are actually occurring at that intersection, because there are a large number of angle collisions that are happening, both from vehicles turning into and out of Charter Road. So with the signal installed at that location, it provides dedicated phases for traffic to be able to enter and exit Charter Road safely. So that is why the signal has been put in.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jim Yarin, Y-A-R-I-N. I'm an Acton resident. I'm also a longtime member of the Acton Transportation Advisory Committee. I'm not speaking officially on behalf of the committee because the committee was not included in consideration of this plan, and we didn't voluntarily undertake to give input. You just answered a few of my questions, but I'll make a comment regarding the Charter Street signal. I think even with the additional capacity, with the additional lanes, that there will be backups to Kelley Corner intersection. And I was wondering, my first question is, if you considered routing the intersection of Charter Road with Mass Ave further away from the intersection, which would solve both the problems of the short distance between them and the sight lines, and there seems to be some possible available land at that point in order to route that street further up Mass Ave. Did you consider that?
So we did actually look at that. That was one of the things that we looked at to overcome the sight distance issue, was moving Charter Road further to the west. The problem became that we were kind of chasing our own tail, where as we moved the intersection further to the west, then the Charter Road became lower. And so we were never able to actually get a point where we were far enough away from the vertical crest curve in the road that we could actually see far enough over that crest to
Did you say that because you weren't able to change the sightline problem, that's why you put the signal in?
That is one of the reasons why the traffic signal was put in.
Okay.
That is correct.
And this is a general comment and sort of a big picture point, which I think will be probably taken with a grain of salt. I think this was an opportunity to fix some really big problems, both at the entrance to Route 2 from Mass Ave, which probably is the most dangerous intersection in the town, and which is DOT's area. I believe it's DOT's responsibility to manage those particular roadways, that intersection, as well as the exit off of Route 2 going eastbound to Mass Ave, to Route 27, opposite of Acton Medical Center. It is almost as bad as the intersection right outside of this building. People trying to get out of the Acton Medical Center to get onto Route 27. And I think what could have happened was all of the intersection with Route 2 could have been, and this is just myself speaking, put at that particular intersection, and that exit ramp and entrance ramp at Route 27, and taken out the complete entrance and exit ramp at the termination of, well, it's not the termination of Mass Ave, but at Roach Brothers where Mass Ave hits Route 2, which would make the traffic coming off of Route 2 at Roach Brothers, which is a big contributor to the entire problem at Kelley Corner, and potential and future backups at Charter Road, backing up into Kelley Corner, would take that completely out and also allow the entire area of, we'll call it the Roach Brothers Plaza, the bottom of Community Road, and CVS in that area to become an actual pedestrian-friendly, much more friendly area. And I think that was a big lost opportunity, and probably at 25% plan, it's never going to be considered and never happen. Unless you can tell me it was considered, and there were good reasons that it was denied, and I'll cede the mic. Was it considered?
So we, as part of this project, we were not tasked with looking at the ramps at Route 2. I know some of the improvements we are proposing will help address the congestion, such as on Main Street at that end with the consolidation and the additional turn lanes we're providing. But we did not do any in-depth studies of the Mass Ave Route 2 intersection or any significant reconstruction activities for the off-ramp on Main Street.
Okay, well, if it's at all possible to
I
look
can
at
add
it.
something too. We have, just internally at MassDOT, we're aware of the issues there. We don't currently have a project proposed there, but we know that is a need. So we'd like to do something there. At one point, we thought about trying to add it, and it just would have made this project so big, would have been really hard to deliver. So.
Well, as long-term
We
planners,
know it has to happen.
over the course of a dozen or 20 years, I think that it's a great inefficiency to address them in two separate times. I also understand this would be a much bigger project, and it is what it is. I'm very happy to see the improvements. I think it's going to be a great improvement on Kelley Corner, but I was also hoping to see a completely different kind of plaza that was actually a plaza. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Snyder Grant, that's a mouthful. I'll definitely spell it for you. SNYDER-GRANT. Thanks. I'm a strong proponent of this project. I happen to be the co-president of Green Acton, but I am not speaking on behalf of Green Acton, so I want to make that clear. Green Acton hasn't taken a position in favor or against this project. So this is just my thoughts and my analysis. There's a piece of the timeline that I'd love to make sure was understood and maybe added to a future version of the presentation, which is the Acton's own comprehensive community plan process, Acton 2020, which included an objective for Kelley's Corner to become a busy, walkable town center. And I see this project as an important first step in that objective, so I'm in favor of it. When I first started reading the functional design report, the document that describes the conditions and the fixes, I was initially taken aback by all the focus on traffic congestion. I'm a bicyclist more than a car driver, so I was more focused. I was looking for more information on safety and bike travel and pedestrian travel. So I needed to do a little research, and what I found was very reassuring, which is, as I'm sure you know, but I didn't know because I'm no traffic expert. The bad accidents between people in cars and people not in cars tend to happen in a couple of, more of them happen in certain situations. One of those situations is when cars are waiting too long. They are rushing for the light before it turns red, and they are rushing to get into the intersection, even before it turns green, because they've been waiting there for so long. So that traffic planning for safety includes that goal of reducing the time that cars are waiting to, a light cycle, or maybe 2 light cycles, but not these endless long queues that we see in the design studies. So I came to appreciate the safety goals here as represented in the traffic goals, including the addition of turning lanes in certain places, like the left turn lane going from eastbound on 111 to north on 27, because so much of that traffic, as you know, that's headed that way is turning left. So to have the second lane and the longer way for them to get out of the straight ahead traffic decreases the wait times, thus increases safety. The other thing I learned about was just a matter of physics, that you get more accidents when cars are moving faster, when their maximum speed is too high. And I just wanted to really appreciate the design features in this project, including the bike lanes, the raised medians, the lower street lights that sort of signal that this is more of a town center, and the street trees, that all, in different studies that I was able to find, reduce maximum speed. So you get a situation in which you have less bad accidents. So for me, this was a win both for bikes and pedestrians and people in cars, so very much in favor of it. One comment about trees. When people were talking about sequestering carbon in trees, that happens as they grow, of course, and it continues to happen for a long time if you have long-lived species. So for me, the notion of planting however many trees it's going to be, 150 something, I don't remember the final numbers, but it was fairly large. Each of those, if they're well maintained by the town, and please maintain these well, each of them is growing each year and turning more carbon dioxide into wood that stays wood for a long time. I think that's a wonderful carbon sequestration strategy. I'm still heartbroken thinking about the gigantic oak on Mass Ave going down, but I totally get that. When I look at the plan, and when I stand out there, I see that really steep sidewalk coming up from the intersection of 111 and 27, going uphill as you travel west on 111. And that's not an accessible sidewalk now. It's, once it gets any bit of ice on it, you start slipping on it anyway. So to bring that down to an accessible grade, I see that slices right through the roots of that oak tree. So I understand it's a wonderful tree and it's in the wrong place. So I'm glad that we're finding a way to replace it with so many street trees. Thank you.
Tara Fredericks, spelled the same way, West Acton. I just want to state for those that know me and have heard me speak, Chris Starr's support of this project is news to me. I've been walking around, and I haven't found one business owner that's been in support. So you guys have done your work. I guess the effort's been worthwhile to get what Chris wants and needs. My question, another couple questions here. The peak traffic on Route 27 North, what percentage of it is from Acton?
I'm sorry, I don't have the breakdown of what percentage of that is coming from Acton and who's coming from
Okay, I
other
heard that it was really
areas.
small, like 10% or 20% or something like that. The trees that are being proposed to be planted, how long before they look like what you have up here? How many years are we talking?
I'm not an arborist, but we can definitely look into that for you.
Okay, thanks. I was a selectman at one time, and at the time that the CVS was put in, there was a special permit application for the driveway there that would facilitate the mall or the strip mall, whatever's going behind there. And GPI, I believe, told us there is no impact to the traffic and that it would be perfectly safe for as long as the planning period. And then a short couple of years later, now we need a light. I just want to make that as a comment. A question. How many cars per minute during peak hour at the main intersection? And the reason I ask is because I've been told that the average speed will be doubled, 3 to 6 minutes, like 3 miles per hour up to 6 miles per hour. And that doesn't, I'd like to know how many cars that means so that I can visualize what's this going to look like as like a racetrack, kind of how many cars are we going to be staring at? Or how many cars are... my brother was hit by a garbage truck that ran a red light, so I don't have any faith just because the light is red that these kids are safe, and the average length of the crosswalks is proposed to accommodate the turning lanes is like 10 feet. And these refuge islands, there was a family of 4 that was run down in Revere, and 1 kid killed while they were waiting on a refuge island, so I don't have any faith in the refuge islands. So I'm wondering how many cars per minute we're talking about.
It would take me a second to add that number up because we have, it's broken out by each individual movement. So when you're talking about total intersection, I'm not sure that number off the top of my head, but I know you were referring to the increase from 3 to 6 miles per hour for the speed. So that information is referring to the emissions analysis. Mm-hmm. And what that average speed is actually it's the average speed over the entire network. So what that includes is basically the length of every single link that's in the network divided by the travel time of every vehicle going through.
Thank you.
So it also includes the delay that's experienced while people are stopped in a queue at each intersection. So the reason that it goes up from 3 miles per hour to 6 miles per hour isn't because people are actually driving faster, it's because they're waiting less time at each of the intersections.
Sorry, maybe I just don't have the new math all set, but I kind of figured that if you had lots of people going 0 and then they weren't going 0, that was faster than 0. But I guess maybe I don't understand traffic engineering. The last question or comment is that the community lane crosswalk in particular is 10 feet longer to increase to accommodate this new turning lane, and it's not even actually where kids are crossing. So I heard you say something about that there's some psychological thing that's within the realm of resistance or lack of resistance or something, that they'll walk to that crosswalk. I mean, I see these kids jumping in the traffic. So I don't think it's a matter of whether they feel like complying. I sense that they don't want to comply. And I feel like adding the turning lane is inviting trouble. But thank you very much for your answers. Thanks.
Hi, I'm David Martin, M-A-R-T-I-N. I'm a town resident. So I just wanted to say I very much appreciate the design of the intersection, increased access by all modes of transportation, cars, bicycles, pedestrians. I like the fact that pollution is reduced. I know that some trees are getting cut down, but many, many, many more trees are being put in. One of the things I really wanted to point out is the difference between this version of the design and the previous version of the design, in my opinion, is greatly increased safety. The Community Drive intersection is a very problematic intersection. Some people, even if they're going from Roach Brothers to CVS now, get in their cars because they don't dare cross the street there. With the signalized intersection, they'll be able to cross the street on foot if they want to. And it's very difficult to pull left out of either of the side streets. So I think that's greatly improved. And at the Charter Road, and I know that doesn't get as much traffic up there, but there are crossing guards during school start and dismissal hours, but they're not crossing guards at any other time. And the older students leave the campus all the time, in all modes of transportation, bicycles, as on foot and in cars. And I greatly appreciate that increased safety. And I think the flashing beacons are also new in this version of the design, which I think is a very good thing. They work very well where we have them in West Acton. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nancy Waters, W-A-T-E-R-S, and I'm a resident of West Acton. First off, I think this is a great plan, and I echo everybody else, in agreement with everybody else, all the positives they've pointed out. I have a few specific questions. 2.5 years ago, my son was struck by a car in a crosswalk, the crosswalk in front of R.J. Gray. I don't know if that's in the project area or not. I don't know if it extends down that far, and I don't know whether it's under the jurisdiction of the state or the town. But I strongly urge that we put in, I call them, you have a lovely term for them, but I call them blinky lights, at that crosswalk. It would be even better if we could get one sooner and not wait 3 years, but if we can't, I would request that it be added to this. I can't think that that's a huge expense. Secondly, my second question has to do with traffic at one particular spot. About 2 hours ago, I was coming down 111 from the west going east, and a ginormous truck turned from 27 north up onto 111 west and got stuck. And I've seen that happen frequently. So is what you're going to be doing to 111 westbound going to make it wider and make it easier for trucks to make that turn? Particularly there's a problem after it snows because of the hill there. There's no place to put the snow gets on the street, the trucks have no room for turning. And it creates a nightmare. The cars that were trying to take a left turn onto 27 had to go out, sneak into the intersection, kind of peek around the truck. The truck driver had to get out and see if he could, make the turn. So whatever you can do to aid that. I'm going to actually ask the question, are there plans to make that wider there?
Yes, so there are plans to make that wider. So on all of the approaches, we're accommodating, I believe it's a WB 50 within its, so WB 50 truck within its own travel lane.
Mm-hmm.
So larger trucks might have to sweep a little bit, so if they're headed northbound to make that turn, they might have to sweep a little bit into the through movement to make the turn around the corner, but large trucks will be able to be accommodated without getting stuck in the intersection.
Yeah, I've seen it happen at least 3 times. And I go through that intersection several times a week, but not 7 times a day. Finally, I have one third point, and again, I don't know whether this would fall under the project purview or if it would be something that the town would want to consider. And I don't know how possible it is, but one of the issues in terms of making this a pedestrian-friendly town center kind of area actually has to do with parking. So if I go to Roach Brothers and I do a little bit of shopping and I want to then walk over to CVS, I'm not going to walk over to CVS. right now I'm not going to do that because it's ugly and dangerous, but even if it became safer and more pleasant, I can't leave my car at Roach Brothers. So if I want to then go over to Quill and Press, you know, I've got to get out of the car, go over to Quill and Press. You certainly cannot leave your car at Starbucks and go anyplace else because there's too much of a demand for parking there. They will kill you if you leave your car at Dunkin' Donuts. So what I'm suggesting is that there should be some kind of municipal parking. Right now, I know there's no space for it. So what I'm talking about is you would come into that area, park, and then do a lot of errands on foot. So I would like the town to consider going forward whatever plans it has for the Kmart area or other areas that may pop up, and perhaps even making arrangements with merchants to obtain some kind of municipal parking going forward. So I think that's everything.
Hi, good evening. My name is Charles Kadlec, and that's spelled K-A-D as in David, L-E-C. Excuse my scratchy voice. During the presentations, there are a lot of objectives that are shown for this project. I have a question to the DOT. What is your highest priority?
Between all of the
All the
objectives,
objectives.
I would say safety is probably our biggest. Safety is always MassDOT's biggest priority.
Safety is then implemented by features of this design that
Yes,
enhance safety?
but we're not. Is your question, would we forego parts of it for safety,
No,
or
I'm just
you want to know
curious
our?
of, you know, what, from your perspective, is the most important objective to be accomplished?
Would be safety, yes.
And second question is, if I understand correctly, there are still some issues to be resolved between the DOT and the town. Can you give us some sense what those issues are and the time frame?
I'm not sure what the issues are. What issues you're
Well, there
referring
was
to?
some mention of the plan is not complete. There are things to be decided.
It's in the early stages of development, so it's not that there's an issue, it's just it has to continue on in development.
We have a town meeting, as you know, in April, 1st of April. Interesting date for town meeting, as always. And I am told, you can tell me if that's correct, that whatever decisions or changes may come from this gathering will not be reflected by any information that be provided to the town prior to town meeting from DOT. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I understand.
What's your schedule for responding to the comments that are being made here?
Any written comments will be responded within a month?
Prior to town meeting?
Sure,
That'd be great. Thank you.
sure. I mean, as soon as I receive the comments, we will respond to comments, but I don't know if you will, depending on when we receive the comments.
I'm just trying
I'm talking about written comments.
to figure out when we are at town meeting a few weeks from now, what will we know more than we know today from DOT?
Well, this project, we will consider all the comments and questions, and we will continue with the design.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. I had a rehearsal, I apologize, so I've missed your presentation, but I've been following along, and I want to say, oh, sorry, Franny Osman, 16 Half Moon Hill in Acton. O-S-M-A-N, Osman, no D. I just want to say that sometimes I see things that I wonder about, or I
question, but on the whole, I see this as an improvement that's been long talked about. I like the more crossings, more lights. When there's a straight cross where you have to drive straight across, like between CVS and Roach Brothers, or between the schools and the new entrance to the Kmart area, it would be impossible to do without a light. And so I'm very grateful for there being lights. And fewer curb cuts, more crossings, better sidewalks. On the whole, I think it's better for walkability and bikeability. And so there are a few things that sometimes I am concerned about, but I think on the whole, I think this is finally making some progress toward making this a more livable area. I would also want to hope that you're including bus stops, because the more people get on our local CAT bus that goes around town, the better. And I care deeply about issues of transportation, disability, and housing. And that's why I'm coming tomorrow night to the housing forum, which is happening here at 7:30. Thank you. Thank you.
Tara Frederick, spelled the same way still. I want to follow up on what Charlie's question was about safety being the biggest top priority. So if safety is the top priority, why have the turning lanes? If it adds 10 feet, effectively a 25% increase, and in some places 40% increase in the walking distance. So why have the turning lanes at all?
So the turning lanes, as I mentioned before, are obviously needed to accommodate the vehicle traffic going through. And the more we can improve the traffic flow and reduce that driver frustration, the safer that drivers are going to travel through the intersection. But although we're increasing the crosswalk width by another 10 to 12 feet per lane, it's not necessarily making the intersection any less safe, because we're also retiming the pedestrian signals. Right now, they're not timed properly to allow a pedestrian to actually cross all the way across the intersection. So we're retiming those to actually allow a pedestrian enough time to cross the intersection. We're also giving them the added feedback of having the countdown pedestrian signals so that they know how much time is left on the signal when they cross. And then we're also providing all the ADA benefits of having the chirping sound that I mentioned, the vibro-tactile push buttons, so that all users can cross the roadway, not just able-bodied pedestrians.
Actually, I'd like to add to this safety of all users, not only pedestrians.
So the safety of the car drivers going faster?
Exactly, all users.
So less congestion is safer. I'm just trying to understand the priorities, because I feel like every time I ask about how we can get the shorter crosswalk distances for people who are disabled, elderly, children, I keep being told that the turning lanes are so necessary because of congestion. So it seems like a circular logic where safety of the pedestrians isn't the most important thing.
Right. Our policy is safety. Our first priority is the safety of all users.
Thank you. And the last thing I'll say is that, so the Board of Selectmen decided this is their highest priority, and they directed staff to effectively spend a lot of time and resources, PR, flyers and all this kind of stuff, and they're holding meetings inside private homes, where they're getting the sales team together to get people to come to town meeting and get their friends to have coffees to have town meeting, and all this kind of stuff. And I feel really like the people who have concerns get shut out from all of that process. And, I hear comments at the public forums, oh, she's just one person. And it feels really like, we'll see what happens at town meeting, but I guess I just wanted to get that on the record, that there seems to be like this professional push by folks that are aligned with developers to get this thing passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make one clarification about the crosswalk lanes. Just for the record, on Mass Ave, the crosswalk, there's 4 approaches. At 3 of them, the crosswalk lengths are being decreased, one of them 22 feet, one of them 1 foot, one of them 14 feet. At one of them, it's being increased by 3 feet.
Hi, I'm Lauren Morton, M-O-R-T-O-N. I wanted to basically thank the businesses who have really worked very hard with the town staff and the Historical Society for working cooperatively. It's always really nice in a town where people can really work towards a goal. This was a goal stated by citizens that we've been trying, as a town to implement in the best way possible and as responsive to public input as possible. And, I look forward, to people being willing to bring their kids in their strollers to Bueno Isano and to the little patios that have recently sprouted up in Kelley's Corner. I think everyone's trying to make an effort to make that a more pleasant and welcoming place to be. The school students, the people in the surrounding neighborhoods who will feel more comfortable walking, the people that are in the housing that for the elderly and the disabled will feel more comfortable walking. So I really look forward to continuing with the design and having people give as much input as possible. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm George Downs. I live on Duggan Road. It's D-O-W-N-S. I got a specific question about the bike boxes for Rebecca. The way you had them on the diagram, I didn't understand them at all, particularly how to make a left turn. And they looked like they blocked the ones that want to turn a right, the cars that want to turn a right turn. So are we turning this into a no turn on red light?
So you are correct. So anytime you have a bike box, you have to restrict the right turn on red. So there will be no right turn on red allowed at the main intersection, at the Main Street and Mass Ave intersection. That would happen whether we use standard bike boxes or the two-stage bike boxes.
So does that mean if the bike box is not full, we can make the right turn? If there's no sign?
There is a possibility of doing that. I don't know whether that would be done. It's still a safety concern. There's a way to do it with blackout signs that show up black when there's no bicyclist in the bike box, and then they would show up saying no turn on red if there is. The problem with that is if the sensor fails in some way and the bicyclist isn't detected, or if they're not fully in the detection zone, then a vehicle might turn right and strike them. So they're not ideal to do that. In this case, the right turn volumes are actually relatively low for most of these turns, though. So if you're headed westbound, for example, on Mass Avenue, the majority of the right-turning vehicles are using community lane anyway, so there's only less than 10 vehicles that are actually turning right in that area. Headed southbound on Mass Avenue, there's a dedicated, on Main Street, there's a dedicated right turn lane there. And the bike box is actually to, if you're kind of looking at the image, it's to the right, but if you're driving down, it's to the left. So that one doesn't have to be restricted. There's no conflict there between the right turns and the bicycles.
Okay, well, I'm
so
just pointing out
allowed.
that it's noticeable. Also, since everyone's made a big deal about the safety issues, and I have to believe that it's really important, I'll point out these little flashes where you push the button. There's a good example in West Acton Center. My wife and I are just waiting for someone not to push the button and walk out, bam. They don't push it. I yelled at one pedestrian and I said, hey, it helps if you push the light. Oh yeah, you're right, okay. So,
Yeah, there will still be the signs that are there in addition to the flashers. So the sign or the flashers are mounted on the sign itself. So if someone doesn't press the button, The signs are still there to alert vehicles that there is a crosswalk there. Pedestrians, with or without the light, should be looking to make sure there's no traffic coming.
The speed limit in West Acton Center is 30 miles an hour. We slow down to 20 to 25 just for that reason. It's hair-raising.
Thank you. So, thank you very much for attending and providing us with this auditorium. Since nobody asked to speak anymore, I declare this meeting ended 9:05. Thank you.